Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the education coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us, and is always an honor to work with, we have Ms. Julia Craven. She is the Enzymedica educator, and she's speaking on the topic of minding your digestion to mend your mind, talking about the gut-brain connection. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you. I always love doing these live streams with you guys. So much so that I am on vacation right now. I'm in Palm Springs, doing a little mini anniversary trip just for a few days. And you can see the beautiful mountains behind me a little bit through my room. So sorry, my lighting is funky. I'm in a hotel room, but I did not want to miss this opportunity. I just adore working with Elizabeth and participating in these events. You guys do such a nice job. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Julia Craven. I'm the Vice President for Education for Enzymedica, which is an enzyme-focused company. We've been around since 1998, but this topic is truly very near and dear to my heart because this is how I got into enzymes, was through a process of trying to mend my own mind. I had a lot of issues with focus. Now we call it ADHD. It didn't have a name when I was working with it. Some depression, and just really always felt like I couldn't quite get my mental act together until I really started to learn about food intolerances. And this was interesting for me because at that point, I'd been participating in natural products and studying herbalism and looking at every nutrient under the sun to see what could help me for many, many years, 10 years. And I still didn't really know about that gut-brain connection. And so this is, again, very near and dear to my heart because this is really what has kept me in the industry so much, is being able to spread some of this information about the fact that your gut is not Las Vegas. What happens in the gut by no means stays in the gut. And there is a direct communication with the brain. And this direct communication is called the vagus nerve. Now, this is one, there's probably a lot more, but the vagus nerve is super interesting because think of it as an information superhighway that runs between the brain and the gut, and then back from the gut to the brain. So as you can see, like, this is actually maybe a little bit of a creepy image of the vagus nerve, but it really, really shows you how connected that nerve system is with the gut, with the intestines. And then even as it goes up, look, there's even vagus nerve in your lungs. And then there's lots of vagal nerve activity in your brain. So think about when you have an instinct that doesn't feel right. It's a gut feeling, right? Maybe your heart clenches up a little bit, your breathing might get different, and that message is going to your brain. These are true nerve feelings that are in our gut, and they communicate to our brain, and vice versa. So bidirectional superhighway called the vagus nerve that leads directly from the gut to the brain, and vice versa. So if you're super mentally stressed out, what happens to our gut a lot of times? It'll clench. It won't feel right. Maybe we might get a little bit of constipation even because we're shut down, because those two things, they are intrinsically connected. You cannot separate the gut from the brain, and you cannot be thinking about mental health if there is something that you want to be looking at without thinking about the gut. So what are some of the things that you can do? Mending the mind. The first one I'm going to talk about today is identifying potential food intolerances. I cannot tell you how important this is as a beginning place. You know, a lot of people are going down the path of working with their mental health, whether that be depression, whether that be focus. It could be so many different kinds of things, anxiety, and they're using a lot of herbs, really great herbs, really, really lovely remedies. Or maybe they're using pharmaceuticals, but they have no idea that at the heart of this could be a food intolerance. And maybe it's not going to fix it, but it can sure make it better. And I'm going to speak to you out of my personal experience with that one. And then if we identify those food intolerances, the elimination of those offensive foods as much as possible, and then the digestive support that goes along with it. But it doesn't end there, because remember, the gut and the brain are connected. And we often think about omegas as being really all about brain health. You know, our brain is sitting in a pool of fats up there. And so we think nourish it with omegas, but really the omegas have a big impact on our microbiome as well. So not to be ignored there. And then there's a couple of deficiencies that folks who have some sensitivities going on, which can lead to damage in the gut. A lot of times they simply aren't getting nutrients, which are super important to our brain health, such as magnesium and vitamin D3, because there's an absorption problem. They're unable to absorb these nutrients as well. So these are the things that we're going to cover today, and there are so many more. I by no means mean to gloss over the many other things that you can do. I'm an enormous proponent of exercise. My mental health shifted fundamentally when I found an exercise that I loved and I enjoy and I do consistently. Recently been exploring neurotransmitter testing to know exactly what it is that's going on with neurotransmitters, so that we can use some of those herbs and things like that, or other nutrients that can support naturally any kind of neurotransmitter imbalance. And last but not least, community, family, love, being a part of something is an enormous part of mental health. And I think so many of us have struggled with that in the face of what we've been dealing with over the last couple of years. So I'm just gonna move along here. I was checking the chat for a second. I'm not really good at that multitasking. So, so what I want to start with is, when the diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When the diet is correct, medicine is of no need. Now, I think that might be a little extreme with the medicine is of no need, but that is an Ayurvedic proverb, ancient healing system from India. And I love the first part, when the diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. I will be very frank and just share my story. I had such extreme food intolerances and believed that it was chronic, long-standing depression. And when I took wheat and dairy out of my life, and this was a 5-year process. So I'm not saying this was something I came to overnight. This was a lot of process of elimination. But over that time period, I found that I no longer needed antidepressants. I no longer needed sleeping medication. I still do take some things like ashwagandha for, toning the nervous system. And if I don't get to hot yoga 4 days a week, I'm a wreck. So I'm not saying that it's a complete program, but I do want to let people know that you can be doing everything right, but if you're not doing the right food, you're just not going to make as much progress as you could. There is no supplement that will change that, especially when we're speaking about food intolerances. So the 3 main food intolerances are lactose. Oh, I hate it when this happens. Lactose from dairy sugar, casein from dairy protein, and gluten from protein from grains. So this is as different for people as you can get. And that's why we have a little picture of a fingerprint. It's to remind me that everybody's sensitivity to intolerance, and potentially even up to an allergy, especially when we're talking about gluten, but it can be for dairy as well, specifically casein, is very individual. Some people can have a little sneak and it's no problem at all for them. Some people can have a pretty normal portion. Maybe they need to take some enzymes to help to break down those foods, but they're doing just fine. But for me, if I have a big plate of pasta with some creamy Alfredo sauce, you will find me crying in bed shortly thereafter. It really affects me. And so I avoid it like crazy. And if I'm going to have a little bit of one of those things, then I can use enzymes because I don't have an allergy. Now, when we're talking about an allergy, that's an immune response. And that is a pretty significant, you want to stay away from those foods, definitely. But there's this thing called cross-contamination. It does happen for sure. And in those instances, when there is an allergy, but some cross-contamination occurs, then enzymes can be a really helpful tool. So gluten. So many of us are familiar with gluten. Probably people on this call are really familiar with the effects that gluten can have on neurological health. There is this cool thing. They're not really cool, actually. They're quite unfriendly, called morphic compounds. So there are morphic compounds that are found in gluten and casein, a couple of other things too, soy, and even spinach. But for gluten and casein, they're called gluteomorphic compounds or caseomorphic compounds. And the reason they're called morphic is because they bind to the same receptor sites in the brain as morphine. So I know, right? So when you're feeling that crazy brain fog that I absolutely cannot focus, I used to explain it, to try and explain it to people as like, I just drank half a bottle of NyQuil and I am not functional right now. That is the morphic compound in play. And that is why these food intolerances can have a massive, massive effect on mental well-being. It can be something as simple as focus. I've seen people who have gluten intolerances and casein intolerances go into anxiety with heart palpitations. For me, it was a feeling of heaviness and like, I can't focus and I'm not sure what I want to do with myself, which I thought was depression, which was really just a food intolerance. So gluten is made of gliadin and glutenin, often from wheat, but other grains as too, barley and rye. And they're very, very resistant to human digestive enzymes. We actually do make specific enzymes to break down gluten-like structures, but they are very, very rough to break down. And additionally, it's estimated that we get 4 times more gluten exposure in our diets today than we did 50 years ago. So we're just not supposed to be getting this much gluten if we are looking at it from a purely evolutionary point of view. If we are looking at this from an agricultural point of view, where we had to grow our own wheat, we had to grind it, and then we had to bake it, we would not be eating all of this wheat at so many times per day. Just from an evolutionary point of view, we're not even supposed to be eating this much. So of course, our body is not prepared for it. So I did want to talk about identifying food intolerances before we talk about enzymes. People are like, how do I know? What do I do? Do I need to go to the doctor and get some testing? If you have a qualified healthcare practitioner, many times naturopathic practitioners, and my presentation's going crazy. So I'm all for testing, but what I'm going to say is to keep a food journal. Just start with the food journal. It is the easiest thing that you can do. You can identify things very often within just a couple of weeks, and you can do it on pen and paper, or you can do it on your phone. There's tons of great apps for it now. Keep a food journal for 2 or 3 weeks. Record how you feel. Are you bloated? Do you have brain fog? I used to get restless legs when I had wheat. I had no idea that there was a correlation there. And it was absolutely life-changing to keep a food journal. I really, really saw what was going on. I'm going to try and switch up my presentation here so that it's not doing this anymore. But in any case, so say you've kept a food journal, you avoid gluten like crazy, but you're on vacation. It's your anniversary. You maybe want to eat a little piece of cake. Or I went and had a gluten-free pancake this morning. It was amazing, but you never know, cross-contamination. And so there is an enzyme called DPP4. I'm trying to stop sharing so that my screen will stop doing that. There is an enzyme called DPP4, which is fantastic. It actually breaks down the gluten protein. And because gluten is not usually alone at the party, gluten is usually with other carbohydrates. You want something that's very, very high amylase. Amylase being the enzyme that helps to break down carbohydrates. I'm going to try sharing my screen here again and see what happens. Okay, so gluten. And there's a couple of different formulas that are available. There's regular gluten ease and gluten ease extra strength. These contain the protease enzyme DPP4, which help to break down the gluten protein, and they also contain a lot of amylase for the carbohydrates in the meal. So that's gluten, right? That's one of the main offenders. The other is dairy. What could be better together too than gluten and dairy? I mean, it is delicious, but thank goodness there are so many fantastic gluten-free, dairy-free foods out there now. I love the oat milk ice creams. Anyway, so dairy, 60% of adults can't digest milk. That is probably a low figure because that is just talking about digestion. So a lot of times when people have problems breaking down lactose, that dairy sugar, what happens is they get that gas. They may get gas, they may get some diarrhea. That is a telltale sign that the issue is the dairy sugar, not the dairy protein. Now there's dairy protein that's casein. And again, because it's a protein, a lot of times people have a stronger intolerance to those proteins. Now, many of us have taken the dairy digesting enzymes. You know, we get a little bit of gassy after ice cream, or we think it maybe just doesn't sit really well with us. And so we go and we take a bunch of lactase. That's the enzyme that helps to break down dairy sugar. But that is not all that's problematic in dairy. It is also the dairy protein, casein. So we have a couple of different formulas here. You can see there's one dairy assist. It's very simple. It's just lactase and protease, breaks down dairy sugar and dairy protein. But if you're like me and you're going to have a little bit of dairy in a meal, you want a complete digestive enzyme that's going to break down the entire meal. So the lacto has a lot of lactase in it, but it also has that amylase and protease to help to break down protein. It has lipase for dietary fats as well. So that would be your complete digestive enzyme. So say you're a person like me, and you have dairy intolerance, and you have gluten intolerance, and then you also just like sometimes you're intolerant to something and you just don't even understand what's going on or why. Like, I guess that did not agree with me, and I don't know exactly what that was. We have this fantastic formula called Digest Spectrum. So Digest Spectrum, yeah, I think this is Elizabeth's favorite enzyme, isn't it? Yeah. So Digest Spectrum has that DPP4 in it to help to break down the gluten protein, high lactase, high xylanase, because more and more people, xylanase is that enzyme that helps to break down phenolic compounds, but also this is the FODMAP enzyme. So if you're on FODMAP way of eating, whether that is for digestive issues, a lot of people are now getting diagnosed with SIBO. I'm so happy to hear that that diagnosis is happening, because what was happening a lot previously is everybody was just getting an IBS, a syndrome diagnosis, which is a syndrome. It's not a diagnosis. And now we're doing some more testing. We're seeing SIBO is really at the heart of all this. And for anybody on the line who has gone through this, you've probably experienced the anxiety that happens with a gut-brain connection there when something is not quite in balance. So Digest Spectrum helps you to digest the entire meal, no matter really what you're avoiding and what you're trying to protect against. So this is always in my bag. I want to reiterate, though, digestive enzymes are not in place of the diet. I have on vacation, and I have successfully had 6 gluten-free, dairy-free, seed oil-free, sugar-free meals, and I'm having an absolute blast. Like, I'm eating like a queen. It is, once you get used to it and you start making those small adjustments and you feel so much better, you're never going to want to go back. But it is a process, and the enzymes can be so helpful as you go through that process. They can also be super helpful if you do actually have an allergy and can help with that cross-contamination, but they are not one in place of the other. And I have to reiterate that so much because that is my personal experience as well. It is about the diet. All right, so we all know about omegas for brain health. Now, it's interesting because 700,000 people a year get their gallbladders out. So many people are getting their gallbladders out every year. And when we get our gallbladders out, what happens is our lipase, our naturally occurring fat digesting enzyme, has a really, really hard time getting into the digestive system. And so sometimes we're not able to derive those healthy fats from our meals. So say you have this beautiful, ideal diet with lots of healthy fats in it. If your gallbladder is compromised in any way, then you're not going to be able to absorb them as much. So we have all these people who are taking all these omegas. Oh, they're so good for us, and yet they have no gallbladders. And I'm like, ugh, enzymes. Anyway, so there are two main kinds of omegas that are very, very popular, DHA and EPA, and they're usually sold in combination. And as you can see, we know about omegas for heart health. We know about them for triglyceride support, eye health. I'm happy to see so many eye doctors now recommending omegas, but brain health, cognitive function, and mood boosting are really what we're going to be talking about today with regard to those omegas. Now, we talked about EPA and DHA, but there's a kind of a missing omega that has really not been talked about very much until recently, and it's called DPA. So we have EPA, DHA, and DPA. And I will get a little tongue twisted here. So one of the reasons that DPA hasn't been talked about very much is because the extraction method hadn't been mastered yet. In the last 5 years, now there's a clean extraction method to be able to get plentiful DPA out of the omegas from fish. A lot of times in formulas, you'll see other omegas on the label, and DPA is in those other omegas. But we believe DPA to be so important that we actually listed it out so that you can see just how much DPA is in our formulas. So here's what's cool about DPA. DPA can convert to both EPA and DHA. It's a very, very interesting omega. And when you take DPA in combination with your other omegas, you get up to 54% better absorption than you would get without DPA. So you really, really want to have DPA just for no other reason than to have that fantastic absorption of the DHA and the EPA. So I'm going to get a little geeky here because it's fun. So I mentioned that DPA can convert into both EPA and DHA. If we look at the right side here, this is actually an enzymatic process from when we consume ALA, alpha linoleic acid, from our diets. It's a fatty acid that can easily be found in foods. Many people are familiar with alpha linoleic acid from flax oil. So as you see, the arrows down, every single one of those conversions is actually an enzymatic conversion that is happening metabolically within our bodies. And eventually we get to EPA, the one that we all know and love for cardiovascular health. Then EPA turns to DPA, and DPA on down the line can turn to DHA. But you see how the arrows go two directions? It's pretty cool because DPA can retroconvert back to EPA, and DHA can retroconvert back to DPA. So think of DPA as your reservoir. Your body will make either EPA or DHA depending on what it needs at that time, meaning the intelligence of the body is driving the show on what is needed that day. It can change from day to day, and your body decides what you need more of. Do you need more EPA or do you need more DHA? When we give the body enough DPA, we're really, really just giving the tools it needs to make its own decision. It's very, very cool stuff. And then we also very much increase the DHA over other products on the market. This is an incredibly unique formulation. First of all, DHA is really well known for mood and stress support. It is the one that is most studied for mood, brain stress support, specifically supporting certain neurotransmitter in the brain, norepinephrine. So many times people who have the variety of depression that's a little bit more like low energy, lack of focus, that's a norepinephrine deficiency, and DHA can be really amazing for it. But higher levels of DHA are also associated with microdiversity in the microbiome. Remember that vagus nerve, it's the superhighway. It's going two ways. It's not just a one directional communication here. So when we enhance the microbiome, we are enhancing that communication that goes between the gut and the brain. So DHA is associated with two major features in the microbiome. The first is the production of something called butyrates. And butyrates are the main energy source that cells that line the colon. So butyrates are helping to keep that delicate intestinal tissue in really, really good condition. We want that because we don't want that intestinal tissue to get porous and get meshy, because then we start getting into leaky gut. So butyrates are directly feeding that gut lining, which is where so much communication happens in the body. And then the second thing that DHA really, really supports is the superstar microbe called Akkermansia. Akkermansia is a microbe that is about 5% of our native population, ideally in our microbiome. And Akkermansia cannot be supplemented with. You can only feed it on your own. Another great nutrient that many people know and maybe even taking is berberine. Berberine also feeds Akkermansia. So what Akkermansia does is that it helps with that mucin layer that is along the lining of the intestines. So butyrates and Akkermansia working really, really beautiful together to help to protect that intestinal lining. But Akkermansia also helps with healthy metabolism and healthy body fat levels. So we want all the Akkermansia that we can get in our gut. And I'm scratching the surface here. There's new information coming out about Akkermansia every single day. So DHA, really, really specifically helping also with the gut, not just the brain, but the gut. And isn't it interesting that we always think of DHA for the brain, but look at how much activity it's having on the microbiome. Super cool. So this is the Aquabiome line. We have a classic strength and a maximum strength. And then we have a product that also has Meriva curcumin. So the Meriva curcumin is bound to phosphatidylcholine so that it can get better entry into the cell. Many, many people are taking curcumin, not just for joint health, but they're taking curcumin to help with that mental health as well because of the how do I legally say it? Modulating inflammation levels in the brain over time. Okay, so I mentioned if there are issues in the gut, we may end up with deficiencies of things that are really, really important, nutrients that are extremely important to mental well-being, and that is magnesium, required for over 300 enzyme reactions in the human body, and yet 50% of Americans are not ingesting enough magnesium, and that's according to the recommended daily allowance. That is not for optimal health. We all know the RDAs are pretty low. That is not for optimal health, and that 50% of Americans not getting enough magnesium is a figure from the NIH. So many of us are taking magnesium, right? We're like, it just makes me feel better. I'm just kind of calm. My muscles are a little bit less achy. My sleep is better. Magnesium is essential for well-being. And so many of us are deficient in it, not just because we have poor soil quality or people are eating a lot of processed foods, but typical magnesium absorption is only about 30%. And then we have issues like diabetes. 1 in 10 Americans having diabetes can impact magnesium absorption, gastrointestinal issues, the Crohn's colitis, celiac, anything where there has been long-term damage in the gut can really, really have a negative impact on those magnesium bioavailability. And then my favorite, medications. Medications can really, really have a negative impact on magnesium. So this is from the FDA website. You can go find this. And this is a safety announcement that occurred in 2011. The Food and Drug Administration announced that association of low magnesium levels can be because of long-term, this is over 1 year, proton pump inhibitor use. Proton pump inhibitors are also known as PPIs, and they are top medication that is used to treat heartburn. Now, you're only supposed to be on proton pump inhibitors for about 6 weeks while you come into normal heartburn levels. So this is just to PPIs are just to sort of get you out of trouble. But unfortunately, people are very, very much overusing them for long periods of time. And so what happens is that they end up with a magnesium deficiency without even knowing it, because it can be a challenge to get off of this class of medications. It is absolutely possible, but it can just take a little bit of time. And so yet here, we have 50 million Americans taking proton pump inhibitors annually, and they don't even know that that can be a problem with magnesium bioavailability. And I'm not talking about a little bit of a deficiency like all of us have. I'm talking about something called hypomagnesemia. And that means you are having heart palpitations, you are having crampings, you are having more serious issues than just, I need a little bit of help sleeping. It's a very serious thing. And yet this class of drugs just absolutely keeps on being used. So there's an immense need. 50% of Americans not hitting the RDA, magnesium absorption, not that great anyway. If the small intestine is compromised, even less good. And then the population that, medications, and not just PPIs, those are just the ones that the FDA put a warning out about, can negatively impact magnesium levels. Now, in Marlene's, you have a great assortment, all kinds of different magnesiums. I just brought you a new one. It's called magnesium acetyltaurinate. And it is one of the magnesiums that this isn't a normal thing, magnesium being able to cross the blood-brain barrier. So I know, it's so exciting. So magnesium usually does not cross the blood-brain barrier well. You might get a little bit, but not a lot. And then also it, because of the way that it is made, it's lipophilic, means it's bound to a fat to help with cell entry. It absorbs 24% faster, and that's at least 24% faster than some of the most popular forms of magnesium. So it absorbs 24% faster than magnesium citrate, 27% faster than magnesium glycinate, and even more going up from that. Why does speed matter? Because if you're feeling stressed, and if you're taking it for feeling, a little bit overwhelmed in the world, which is very easy to do if you're participating in nearly anything in the public, you want it to work quickly, right? So in addition to crossing the blood-brain barrier, it also has a really cool secondary thing in that it does not, it's not what's called an osmotic magnesium. Osmotic magnesiums draw a lot of water into the lower GI, and that presence of water helps to push things through, and often that is what will give people a bowel movement. So if you're taking magnesium to help with irregularity, there are a lot less expensive magnesiums that can be really, really helpful for that. Magnesium acetyltaurinate is specifically a brain magnesium, and it's magnesium acetylated bound to the amino acid L-taurine. So here's how it works. Okay, you've got the lipophilic nature of magnesium and taurine together. Taurine is a naturally occurring amino acid. And then what happens is, because it crosses the blood-brain barrier, you get increased magnesium actually in the brain cells. So it's lipophilic, it can get into the cell in addition to crossing that blood-brain barrier. What happens when we get magnesium into the cells is that the body stops producing so much canic and glutamic acid. These are called excitatory neurotransmitters, okay? And that is what, there's another magnesium on the market called magnesium L-threonate, and it actually does exactly this as well. It can enter into the cell, and by entering into the cell, you produce less of those excitatory neurotransmitters, excuse me. Now, here's where magnesium acetyltaurinate goes a step further. What magnesium acetyltaurinate does is it binds to those same receptor sites that glutamic and canic acid would bind to. And so you cannot have that neurotransmitter, as much of that neurotransmitter reaction. So magnesium acetyltaurinate, you feel it usually in about a half an hour, and it's just like, oh, thank you. Also fantastic for stress response, as I just kind of displayed there, restful sleep and cognition. So how does something that helps with stress also help with cognition? And I'll give an example that all of us have done. It's the morning, you are racing to get to work, something didn't go right at home, the dog got out, the child did not want to put on the socks to get ready to go to school. You've got a big presentation when you get to work. You're hitting every stoplight and you're like, I forgot my glasses. Where are my glasses? I forgot my glasses. They're on my face. Your brain does not work well when you're overstimulated. And so that's how something that is calming can also be something that is very, very focusing. So that is how magnesium acetyltaurinate works. And here is the product. It's called Magnesium Mind. And all of the clinical studies on this product, which did show enhanced magnesium levels in neuronal tissue, 24% better absorption, helpful with stress response, increases restful sleep. In fact, many of us have done the experiment with our handy smartwatches now. We get consistent higher REM levels, 20 to 25% for all of us that have tracked it within the company. So more REM sleep, and then that enhanced cognition. You'll see that each capsule is 350 milligrams. All of the studies were done on 700 milligrams. So you can take that all at once, or you can take it in a divided dose. I will tell you that I travel a lot just for my job, and it's, man, airports, they are not fun anymore. There's no glamour in travel any longer. You will get stuck somewhere overnight. And so I always have the Magnesium Mind with me because I take higher levels when I'm in those stressful situations or what would trigger your nervous system. And I'm like, it's okay. I'll get there eventually. I really notice that I have a better capacity for dealing with daily stressors and not getting too engaged in really responding to them, being able to handle it much more easily. So for those people that also have physical stressors, there is an ongoing physical discomfort. We know how well different kinds of magnesium can work for that as well. Magnesium malate has been studied and studied and studied for issues like the achiness that can be associated with fibromyalgia. But just all of us, as we age, we get older, I'm using my body a lot in yoga, and every once in a while I'm like, what? That never happened before. This being 50 stuff is not cool. It's not okay. So magnesium malate, magnesium glycinate are really, really wonderful for joints and the muscle structures. And then we mix that with the magnesium acetyltaurinate. Why? Because if you're having ongoing physical discomfort, that is one of the most stressful things that you can be going through. So this is truly a body-mind magnesium. If you are looking for something to help both the body and the mind, magnesium motion is where it is at. Really, really fantastic product. And really for that, my heart goes out to people who are in chronic discomfort, because that is one of those most stressful things that can occur. And a lot of times these folks don't know that their food intolerances can also be contributing to that. Many, many people who have gluten intolerance especially will get achiness while their body is processing through those gluten proteins, and they don't even know that that is what's going on. So again, all goes back to diet. All right, my last deficiency that can happen is vitamin D. Now, we've long known vitamin D helping with mood, can help with cognition, sunshine, vitamin D. I'm just gonna, I just sort of feel better. I feel more upbeat. And there are lots and lots of studies, but there's one that came out in August of this year. So it's very recently, and it's a meta study. And it is a total of over 53,000 people combined from 41 studies. This makes me so happy, because usually when you look at studies, they're like, oh, there were 15 people studied and it was really successful. I'm like, look, there's 53,000 people studied. It was really successful. The research suggesting that vitamin D supplementation, and the studies were all between 50 and 100 micrograms per day, which is just under 5,000 IUs per day, suggests that vitamin D supplementation has beneficial effects for both individuals with major depressive disorder as well as those with milder clinically significant symptoms. So again, always, 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 you want to work with a qualified healthcare practitioner. I'm not saying go take vitamin D as your one and only. I'm saying that it is something to really consider if you find yourself having issues in this way. But again, it's all a part of a program, and please, please, please always work with your qualified healthcare practitioner. That could be your doctor, that could be your acupuncturist, that could be your counselor, it could be very many things, but please don't go it alone. Okay, but vitamin D, usually from the sun or sheep's wool, right? So people think I'll just go out and I'll be in the sun and it'll be okay. And maybe not so much in the Pacific Northwest. But the truth is that you have to get a great deal of your skin and your eyes in the sun in order to actually trigger that vitamin D production that you can make. You can make endogenous vitamin E. So you have to get a lot of, I think it's over 20% of your skin mass in the sun for at least 20 minutes. And that is very, very different according to where you are in the world in relationship to the equator. And also, what kind of skin do you have? How much melanin do you have in your skin? It's going to be quite different for different skin types. And then most vitamin D on the market is from sheep's wool. Yuck. It's from the oil called lanolin that comes from sheep's wool. And, you know, that's okay. It's a source. It's what's in all the fortified foods. But maybe it's not the cleanest source. So there are some really, really cool plants out there that when they are exposed to sunlight, they create D3. And algae is one of them. When algae is exposed to UV rays, it creates D3. Lichen also creates D3 as well. So those are two vegan forms. But the thing with algae is that it can be grown in a controlled environment. So we can make sure that it's certified organic. And that is something that not a lot of other companies are able to say right now. We're extremely excited about this because it's vegan, but it's also more important to me. It's a certified organic D3, and it's completely sustainable, non-GMO, certified organic, suitable for vegans. And when you get all of those lovely things, high bioavailability. But it's not just about D3. D3 is fantastic if we're just talking about mental acuity and cognition, but it also has a fantastic ability to help to strengthen our bones, especially when combined with K2. And there's a specific kind of K2 that works best. It's called MK7. So what K2 MK7 does is it actually helps to make sure that calcium gets into the bones and out of arteries. Because what can happen a lot of times if there's not enough K2, which is naturally occurring from those beautiful big green leafy vegetables, you can get lots of naturally occurring K2. If there's not enough of it, what happens is that the calcium can stay in the artery, we can get calcification, and we don't need any more problems with arterial plaque and calcification as we age. So K2 is extremely important, and it's a great partner for vitamin D3, simply for bone health. Now, another one of those cool plants that creates vitamin D3 is shiitake mushrooms. Actually, all mushrooms do, but shiitake is the superpower D3 creator. And if this is a cool trick, so when you go to Marlene's and you get your beautiful shiitake mushrooms, flip them over, put them in your sill, like if you have a sunny window for 24 hours, you will have a D3 creating machine. D3 is created on the gills of the shiitake mushrooms. And so you can get naturally occurring D3 from shiitake. Just set it out for a day. And then when you cook it, you're going to have an immense, like a nice dose of D3. Different, just different according on the day, the mushroom, the sun, all of that. But naturally occurring, I always like to try and get it out of food. And I find it so interesting that shiitake mushroom has been used medicinally in traditional Chinese medicine for over 6,000 years to support immune function, to support cellular health and what they call qi, life force. So was it the D or was it all the other amazing constituents? Who knows? But there's a very, very interesting correlation there. So this is why we have formulated the organic D3 using algae as well as the K2, which is the MK7 form. Normal K2, if you were to take it in supplemental form, may actually increase clotting. We don't want that. So this is the form that will not do that and actually helps to shuttle that calcium into the bones with shiitake mushroom powder and then organic prebiotic fiber, because again, we always want to feed the microbiome. When we're keeping that microbiome in excellent condition, we're going to aid in absorption. And when we aid in absorption, we're going to get more of those benefits from the D3. So this concludes my talk. And just to kind of reiterate, food intolerances, keep a food journal, figure out what's bugging you. Every time I really start to food journal, like it took me a while to get sugar out of my life almost completely. Now it's like a special occasion thing, right? And every time I eat sugar now, I'm like, it just does not agree with me. I just almost don't even like it anymore. So interesting. So it goes in phases. It takes time, but give yourself that gift. And you know what? If you completely go off the rails, just come back tomorrow. It's no big deal. You can start over anytime. And you also have enzymes that can help you with that cleanup work and help you to break down those foods that can be troublesome to you. We always want to make sure and take an omega to help to nourish the brain, especially one that's very high in DPA. Supporting with magnesium, because so much of us are deficient in it, but we want a magnesium that crosses the blood-brain barrier and helps with those excitatory neurotransmitters, helps to calm them down, because the magnesium you can really feel. You can really, really feel this magnesium. And then addressing one of the most common deficiencies that has to do with focus, acuity, but also depression, vitamin D3. So I think that is it. I think we end up with, yep, some happy brains and guts here. So thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Julia, for that informative presentation. I know you saw my excited and um just shocked by some of the knowledge that you were saying. So fascinating about the shiitake mushroom, but then also the blend of the new magnesium that y'all came out with. It has everything you need, and it gets through the blood-brain barrier, which in turn helps the gut. And then I've gotten a lot of people who are loving that Digest Spectrum product.
Yeah.
My partner, my boyfriend Jared, is one of them, and he's able to digest his food and not worry about constantly having this battle.
Yep.
Yeah.
For people who have a minor intolerance, it can offer so much freedom. And that's something too, I think we all felt when we were not able to go out to eat, not able to gather, that food is really such a source of community, and community is such a source of mental health. And it's really tough when you're the one person in the room that can't eat stuff, you know? And so this, for many, many people, can help afford a little bit more room if they're, you know, on the everyday, really, really great. And then every once in a while, and everyone's different. Remember the fingerprint. Everybody is different, and your fingerprint changes over time. What I can do now is very, very different than what I was able to do 5 years ago. And it's because of just consistent, my gut's been healing, you know?
In of itself, a true testament, to, you've been in this industry. When did I hear you correctly that you're like in your 50s?
Yeah, I'm 50. I turned 50 last year.
Oh my goodness, you look great. So that in of itself, you've been in this industry, you've been learning the knowledge, and being the lead of the education for Enzymedica, you've been able to heal your gut, which in turn heals the skin. and yeah, and which supports other aspects of the body.
Immune system, I mean, if your gut is struggling, your immune system is it's an uphill battle. And so it really, that there's a reason that we say that Hippocrates said health starts in the gut. And it's one of the reasons that it's one of the first things you learn when you go to naturopathic medical school is you learn all about digestion and the gut. And now that microbiome is a household word, it's like a new frontier every day is coming out with the research. And it all just validates what we've always known, but it's good to have the validation.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and that vitamin K, MK7, I was doing a training for Enzymedica that in prep for this, and it was so fascinating to me how um it it really gets into the cells, and getting that vitamin D in there, and then having that formula combination is just phenomenal.
Yep. Yep. People think, oh, just I get some sun. I'm like, you don't know how much sun you need to get. Hard. You have a job and you are working indoors, you may not be getting enough sun. End of story.
Exactly. And just like how you had mentioned, it's really important to kind of get your levels evaluated, so then what um how many units of the vitamin D that you need. But the formula that y'all have is like a really good base note, I feel, because it's at 5,000, right? Units.
It's at 5,000, and I wanted to keep it a little bit lower because now people are now taking immune formulas that will have some D in it. They'll be having some D in their multivitamin. They may have D in some other formula. So even if I was like, okay, so if somebody is stacking a few things and getting vitamin D in multiple places, we're still not getting too much. And that's why I wanted to keep it on the lower side.
That's brilliant. And so you could say that they're high in demand.
Great. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to take part in the new magnesium formulas. I'm always looking for ways to help my sleep, and I feel that magnesium helps me a lot. Um I kind of want to purchase both, but the motion one, as you said, has the magnesium uh tart
And
how
you
do you
can
pronounce it?
just say Atomag, like attaboy, but Atomag.
Atomag. It's thank you. It has the Atomag and the malonate and these
Glycinate.
glycinate, thank you, which is like all the goodness wrapped up in one supplement.
Yep, it really is. It's the best magnesiums altogether. And what I usually suggest with people is to actually start with the motion. And then if you feel like you would like more of that mental, that relaxation feeling, then you can add the mind to it. So that's another option too. I know when I'm traveling, I'm taking a lot more mind because I'm like stressed getting from one place to another. I get up at 2 weeks ago, I was on the road, hit traffic. I literally like rolled up to the outside of an event, flew out 1 minute, walked in, plugged in, started talking. And I thought I would usually be really stressed out right now. I was like, this is all okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
Aw, because you had the mind and know-how to take that great product, and that's so wonderful that you've already seen a shift in that. And just for those of you that are just joining us till the end of the month, um on assorted sizes and varieties of Enzymedica products are on 25% off sale, a huge savings at both store locations located in Tacoma and Federal Way at Marlene's till the end of the month. So get get your motion on and mind your magnesium.
Awesome.
Well, folks, is there any questions? We have a couple of moments. Feel free to enter in the chat box or unmute yourselves while we have our lovely expert here. But we thank you for taking the time and your energy for being here with us. What a lovely day it's been. We had a class earlier today on fiber, so I have been digesting a lot of great gut information today.
You're in it.
Yes, I am. Well, if there's no questions, we thank you so much, and stay tuned for more great classes. All the classes through the end of the year is on our website.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.